We heard it every night, meaning we heard drone attacks and saw drones flying over our house and hitting buildings near us. It was very hard to realize that the country where you were born is sending these weapons and helping Russia. And what the Iranian regime is doing is a crime against Ukraine. Regimes like Russia and Iran only understand force, in my view. And the most important thing is to understand that the cost of this regime staying will be much higher than the cost of this war. Here, I must say that Iran's government, that is, the Iranian regime, although it calls itself Islamic, before being Islamic, is a terrorist regime.
Good afternoon. First, let's get acquainted. Could you tell us who you are, where you are from, how long you have lived here, and what you do?
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. I have lived in Ukraine for about 20 years. I came to Ukraine around 2006. I studied here. My first year was in Kyiv. Then I lived for 8 years in Kyiv. Now I live in Kyiv. I have my own business. I own an interior design and architecture company. I have spent over half my life in Ukraine. Especially since 2022, I have tried to use all my abilities to tell Ukrainians what is happening in Iran, especially after the 2022 protests, after Mahsa Amini was killed. On my Telegram channel, now with about 10,000 subscribers, and in interviews, I explain what is happening in Iran. I think I managed, in my own way, to change Ukrainians' view of Iran. I also write in Persian for Iranian audiences, so they know what is happening in Ukraine. So they understand Ukraine has resisted the world's second army for over 4 years, and that the Iranian regime is helping Russia commit crimes against Ukraine. I write a lot about these issues. I have been doing this since 2022 because I think I can help, at least a little, both Iranians and Ukrainians.
You are an Iranian citizen living in Ukraine, correct? Who is your Telegram channel aimed at?
Yes, I am Iranian by nationality. I have an Iranian passport. But my permanent residence is Ukraine, and I have permanent residence here. As for my Telegram channel, the channel I created in 2022, I wrote in Russian and Ukrainian for a Ukrainian audience. It started with a very small number of people, no more than about 500. When I first started, now it has reached 16,000, almost 17,000. Most of my audience there are Ukrainians or Russian speakers living around the world. Some of them are in Israel, among my current audience, especially after the war began. But in any case, most of my Telegram audience are Ukrainians.
You have an active civic position and run a Telegram channel. You said you do a lot of filming. Is it connected to this Telegram channel? Or where is this footage published later? And what is it aimed at?
Yes, I give different interviews. But most of my activity is media-related. Mainly, it is about my interviews. I have given many interviews to well-known Ukrainian journalists, widely seen on YouTube. Some got about 300 to 400,000 views. And when events happen, especially when something happens in Iran, like protests or major events such as war. I give interviews almost every day, either to a journalist or to a media outlet that invites me. Most of them are Ukrainian media, but some are also from Israel. Yesterday, for example, I spoke with Israeli radio. And this has basically become daily work for me, especially when so much news comes from Iran every day, and the internet is often cut off. So people worldwide do not know what is really happening in Iran. That is why it is very important for them to have someone who is Iranian, who understands Persian, and has contacts in Iran, who can speak about the situation inside the country. That is why I am often invited to speak on these topics.
You said you have relatives who stayed in Iran. Can you tell us how they are now? You are very active and attend rallies against Iran's current rulers. Were you not afraid for their safety? Do they share your position?
Yes, I keep in touch with family, friends, and acquaintances in Iran. But since the war began, and as you know, the internet in Iran is often cut, contacting Iran is very difficult. So many of these contacts have basically been lost. But from time to time, it is still possible to call and ask how they are. Just to learn how they are in this war and what they are doing to protect themselves in these wartime conditions. And based on our own experience of war in Ukraine, I give them some advice, like stocking up on food or staying away from windows, the same things we did here in Ukraine 4 years ago. So we cannot ask detailed questions about what exactly is happening in Iran. But that does not mean we know nothing about what is happening in the country. There are other ways to stay connected with Iran, but I cannot say here what those ways are. Still, this is not contact with family, but with other people who have Starlink or other ways to contact the outside world. And we stay in touch with them. There are people who have contact with Iran, and they are the ones spreading this information. And we then use that information. I try to share in Ukraine the information coming from Iran, including on my Telegram channel, and in my interviews, and with you.
Please tell us what it is like to be Iranian in Ukraine. What are the pros and cons? Are there any special aspects?
When I came to Ukraine in 2006, Ukraine welcomed me very warmly. I always say Ukraine gave me work, gave me education at university, and here I was able to build a family. So I do not see being a foreigner in Ukraine as a big problem. It is not something difficult. People welcomed me very warmly. After the events of 2022, when Iran started helping Russia and sending Shahed drones to Russia to be used against Ukraine, I began to feel a little that when I say I am Iranian, people's response or attitude is different from before. But that is natural, because Iranian drones here, unfortunately, hit residential buildings, and innocent people are killed. And what the Iranian regime is doing is a crime against Ukraine. And I understand Ukrainians, because this is very painful for them. But overall, honestly, the attitude toward me has been very good. And through all these years, and I have lived here for 20 years, I have had no serious problems. I was always treated well. People quickly saw me as one of their own, and they accepted me quickly. In the groups I joined, at work, and among friends, I have had no problems so far.
What did you feel when you learned that Iranian weapons were striking the country where you live, where you came, and where you work and grow?
It was a very bitter and hard experience. When in 2022, Iran's drones hit Ukraine, we heard it every night, meaning we heard drone attacks and saw drones flying over our house and hitting buildings near us. It was very hard to realize that the country where you were born is sending these weapons and helping Russia. For all Iranians in Ukraine, this was very hard. And that is why Iranians in Ukraine, at the very start of these attacks, when those drones began attacking Ukraine, organized a rally near the Iranian embassy and condemned Iran's help to Russia. We held a protest there, where most Iranians in Ukraine stated their position and said they opposed it. At that same rally, we supported the people of Iran, those who were then ready to go out after Mahsa Amini was killed, and protest. We supported the people of Iran. And for every Iranian living in Ukraine, this was very difficult. Everyone tried, somehow, to make up for it. There are Iranians who went to fight for Ukraine in different units of Ukraine's army. Many people helped the army, financially, or by supplying needed materials that Ukraine's army needs, like clothing or food or some equipment, which they provide. Iranians in Ukraine see it as their duty in this war, where Iran is especially helping Russia, to stand with Ukraine and help Ukraine's army.
Do you personally feel the effects of enemy attacks on the capital, on the city where you live?
Yes, as I said, we see these Iranian regime drones in the sky over Kyiv and over the area where I live, over my house. Drones have flown many times, and these drones are shot down. This has become part of our daily life. It has become normal. We see these Iranian regime drones, which were given to Russia and are used to attack Ukraine, hitting buildings near the place where I live. And in any case, this is what happened. And as I said, Iranians who are in Ukraine are very upset about this, and they try to do something to somehow make up for it.
Why do you think Russia wants to destroy Ukraine?
The reason Russia wants to destroy Ukraine is tied to its long imperial ambitions. And we know that throughout Ukraine's history, Russia, since it emerged as a state, has always been an aggressor. And this aggression was not only against Ukraine, but against all neighboring countries. In Iran, we also know Russia in the 18th and 19th centuries attacked Iran many times and tore away parts of its territory. After that, Russia was always an aggressive state. If we look at recent history, In 2008, it attacked Georgia and occupied part of its land. In 2014, it attacked Ukraine. And in 2022, it attacked Ukraine again. All this shows that Russia is an imperialist state, living with a medieval mindset. Modern laws mean nothing to it, and international law means nothing to it. It understands only force. All countries around Russia have experienced this, and know Russia is an aggressor. History proves it. Unfortunately, they want to use this aggression to subjugate neighbors under their control. They think this will make their country stronger. But this is a mistake. And today we see this mistake. Putin wanted to take Ukraine in 3 days. But this war has lasted over 4 years. We see this war has weakened Russia, not made it stronger. And the plans they had for Ukraine showed their strategy was completely wrong. In the end, this will weaken Russia. At the same time, it is very important to look at Ukraine's resistance. The only thing that put Russia in a weak position today was Ukraine's firm resistance. In 2022, the Ukrainian people stopped Russian aggression.
Why do Western countries accuse Iran of terrorism and other Eastern countries if the real aggressor and terrorist is Russia and its government?
In my view, terrorism exists in many parts of the world today. Iran's regime can certainly be called terrorist. We can call it that directly. Because over the past decades, it has constantly supported terrorism, supported terrorist groups in the region, like Hashd al-Shaabi, Hamas, and the Houthis. So Iran's regime is a terrorist regime. And Russia is also a terrorist regime. We see Russia killing innocent people in Ukraine every day. Cities that were large and developed are being destroyed every day in eastern Ukraine. They are under bombardment. People are dying. This also shows Russia's regime is terrorist. And these regimes, whether Iran or Russia, use their capabilities and resources to spread terrorism in the world and kill civilians in other countries. Their actions show that these states support terrorism at regime level. And this is happening in Russia as well as in Iran.
Can you and other Iranians help Ukraine now in this hard time?
Yes, as I said, there are Iranians who take part in the war in Ukraine and serve in different units of Ukraine's army. Many went as volunteers and provide financial help and help with equipment. Everyone does what they can. I know one Iranian who serves in Ukraine's army, and his job is to target those Shaheeds, which Iran gave to Russia. He is in mobile teams that move by car and shoot down these drones. And there are many such people. Iranians who stayed here in Ukraine, most of them want to help Ukraine, to somehow make up for the damage Shahed drones caused Ukraine.
In your view, what awaits Ukraine next, and should we accept this conditional peace?
In my view, Ukraine has a bright future. First of all, the people of Ukraine are a people who resisted in this war. They are people who showed they can preserve their state and defend it. And they are ready to do that, ready to go and fight for it, and stop an army as large as Russia's. The main reason I believe Ukraine will succeed is its people, people who stand by their country and defend it. That is the first point. The second point concerns your question. About Russia's peace proposals for Ukraine. Peace in Ukraine is possible only if Ukraine itself accepts it. And agrees to those terms. We know that Russia's proposal is unacceptable to Ukraine because it questions Ukraine's territorial integrity and also the size of its army. There are many other issues Ukraine cannot agree to now. So if we talk about a peace deal, it must be a peace that Ukraine and Russia and Western countries, and in general all sides can accept. And here Ukraine is the key. That means this peace deal must be acceptable to Ukraine and to the Ukrainian people. This is the most important thing to take into account in any peace proposal. Because if Ukraine does not accept it, there will be no peace. That is why I do not think that the proposal you mentioned has any real prospects. And ultimately, regimes like Russia and Iran only understand force. In my view, they must be forced to accept peace terms that are good for everyone.
Terrible events are also happening in Iran now. What do you feel as an Iranian citizen when you see what is happening to your country?
There is war in Iran now. And I myself have lived under war here in Ukraine for 4 years. War has never been good. War is bad. Everyone understands that. And unfortunately, in this war, part of our country's infrastructure is being destroyed. But if we look overall, the damage being done to Iran, to Iran's economy, and to its infrastructure will be even greater if the regime stays in Iran. And if this war leads to the regime's fall, we will prevent the damage that this regime could cause in future to our country. And in my view, what is happening now, especially in recent weeks, when regime leaders, the IRGC and Besiege forces, are being hit, opens a door. It gives the Iranian people a chance to use it to free themselves from this regime. And the infrastructure now being destroyed can all be rebuilt. Iran is a rich country. And the most important thing is to understand that the cost of this regime staying will be much higher than the cost of this war.
Do you think this war is a new beginning for Iranians?
In my view, I think the situation Iran is now in did not start with this war. In my view, the events happening now began with the mass protests in Iran this January, when on January 8th and 9th, millions of people took to the streets and protested against the regime. That was the turning point that changed Iran's history forever. And the war the U.S. and Israel are now waging against the Iranian regime, in my view, continues that movement that Iranians began in January. I hope this leads to a result, and that in the coming weeks, the Iranian people can finish what they started in January and overthrow the regime. In my view, the events happening in Iran today are historic. They will change our country's history in the coming weeks.
Do you think this is politics, resource sharing at the cost of human lives, or a war of liberation? What is happening?
In my view, if we talk about war, on war, what is happening now can be viewed from several angles. On one hand, the Iranian regime is weakening, and Iranians can use this opportunity, use this historic chance, and overthrow the regime. This is in the interests of Iranians and in Iran's national interest for this regime to fall. As for foreign governments, Israel, the U.S., and Arab countries, this is certainly in their national interest too, that the Iranian regime be weakened and disappear. We see these countries acting in their own national interests. Maybe Iran's freedom is not that important to them, but weakening the Iranian regime matters to them. In the events now happening, everyone, the Iranian people, the State of Israel, the U.S., and even Arab countries, in recent days, are moving in one direction. The interests of all these sides have aligned and are moving toward one goal. This is very important. Overall, we can say that these countries' national interests aligned with the interests of the Iranian people in the same direction, and the Iranian people can use this opportunity. Here I must say that Iran's government, that is, the Iranian regime, although it calls itself Islamic, before being Islamic, is a terrorist regime. We have seen this regime's terrorist actions in Syria as well. Before this, there were Muslims in Syria too, but the Iranian regime sent the IRGC there and massacred Syrians. So the history of Iran's regime shows it is a terrorist regime. For it, there is no difference who is being targeted, whether they are Muslim, Christian, or another faith. The nature of this regime is terrorist. The other side's religion does not matter to it. Only its own ideological goals matter. That's why we see attacks being carried out against countries in the region, such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and other regional countries. This is part of the same pattern. Because this regime, contrary to what it says about being Muslim, is not really like that. For it, more important than religion is its own terrorist ideology.
What would you advise Iranians now? Wait or fight?
The Iranian people, at this moment, as Prince Reza Pahlavi, leader of the National Revolution, said, as President Trump said, and as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, the Iranian people these days, when heavy bombardments are taking place in big cities like Tehran, Shiraz, Isfahan, and even small towns, should stay at home and protect their lives. Because being in the street puts their lives at risk. And I am sure a day will come. That day will definitely come, when it is time to go into the streets. And on that day, the Iranian people must definitely go out and, with their presence in the streets, take back their country, Iran, from this occupying regime. So at this moment, it is better to stay at home. But when Prince Reza Pahlavi calls, Iranians must take that historic step to overthrow the regime.
How do you see the near future? How do you see events developing?
If we look from the start of the war, at first, strikes hit missile sites and missile launchers, and the regime's military power. IRGC bases were struck. But if we look at the last week or two, these strikes have expanded to the regime's repression system. That means the repression system is getting weaker day by day. We see strikes on besieged bases, the main forces repressing Iranians, and strikes on police stations, even in small towns. In my view, these strikes must expand every day against the repression system to make that system as much as possible weaker and demoralized, until it becomes so weak that Iranians can, with much more safety than before, go into the streets and bring their national revolution to victory.
What would you wish now for Ukrainians and Iranians?
I have a very clear wish for the people of Ukraine and for the people of Iran. I wish for freedom. Freedom for Ukraine. Freedom for Ukraine's lands, now occupied by Russia. I wish Ukraine victory in this war Russia imposed on it. I wish the same for Iranians. It is interesting how similar these wishes are, because both Ukraine and Iranians are fighting terrorist regimes. I wish both success. I wish victory, so that Iranians can, by overthrowing the regime,